Hey everyone, and welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly epic ancient tale, all about destiny, prophecy, and the wild psychological effects of having a divine safety net. We're going to be looking at a fascinating story from ancient texts that really digs into human behavior, specifically what happens when you completely remove the ultimate consequences from the equation. We'll be examining a monarch named Sisupala, the king of Chedi, and uncovering the bizarre, terrifying, and frankly, mind-bending origin story behind his absolute off-the-charts arrogance. So let's jump right in with our central mystery. How on earth did a mortal king get wicked and arrogant enough to challenge a mighty, legendary warrior to battle? Well, the wise elder Bhishma explains this perfectly. He literally calls Sisupala a wretch of a king, pointing out that his wicked heart is fueled entirely by a boon, which is basically a divine promise or blessing. And this boon was granted to him by Govinda, who we'll come to know as Krishna. Now, to figure out exactly why Sisupala feels so incredibly untouchable, we need to rewind and uncover the origin of this mysterious boon. Let's start with a terrifying royal birth. To really wrap our heads around this guy's overconfidence, we have to flash back in time to the kingdom of Chedi. You see, Sisupala wasn't born a normal prince. His entry into the world wasn't met with, your usual royal fanfare and celebration. Instead, it was an event that absolutely horrified everyone in the room. The infant was born with 3 eyes and 4 hands. And if that physical anomaly wasn't terrifying enough, the text actually tells us that right after being born, he didn't cry like a normal baby, he screamed and brayed like a donkey. These were considered extraordinarily terrifying omens. The fear was so overwhelming, so intense, that his parents, totally gripped by anxiety, actually resolved to abandon the newborn child right then and there. Which brings us to the invisible voice's prophecy. Picture this scene. Right as they make this terrible, heart-wrenching decision to abandon their child, a booming, invisible voice suddenly echoes through the chamber and paralyzes the entire room. The king, the queen, their ministers, the priest, they're all just frozen. The disembodied voice tells the king and queen not to fear, promising that the boy will actually become incredibly fortunate and superior in strength. But that wave of relief you'd expect from hearing your child will survive, it's immediately crushed by a chilling twist. The voice says, "He that will slay him with weapons hath also been born." So it guarantees his survival in youth, sure, but it also confirms that his ultimate executioner is already walking the earth. You can just imagine the mother's sheer panic, right? Driven by this sudden rush of affection and utter dread for her son, she bows with joined hands and begs the invisible being for just one more piece of information. She demands to know who this slayer is going to be. And the voice responds with a highly specific, very physical trigger. It decrees that when the child is placed upon the lap of his destined slayer, his extra superfluous arms will drop to the ground like a pair of 5-headed snakes, and the third eye on his forehead will simply vanish. Next up, testing 1,000 kings. So word of this miraculous, terrifying child, with his extra limbs, his third eye, and this dark prophecy hanging over him, spreads like wildfire across the earth. It turns the entire kingdom into this massive, high-stakes waiting game. And that brings us to a staggering number, 1,000. 1,000 kings of the earth visit Chedi. To put that into perspective, that's basically a whole stadium's worth of royalty. The king of Chedi begins this nerve-wracking ritual, taking his monstrous child and placing him upon the laps of these visiting kings, one by one. They're essentially testing the prophecy, holding their breath every single time the baby is handed over. But across 1,000 different kings, absolutely nothing happens. The extra arms stay, the third eye stays. The slayer, it seems, hasn't arrived yet. Let's move to Krishna and the 100 Pardis. Eventually, the mighty Yadava heroes, including Krishna, who is also referred to as Damodara here, travel to the capital. Now, they aren't there to gawk at a strange child. This is just a normal family visit to see their aunt, the Queen of Chedi. After being welcomed, the queen, happy to see her nephew, decides to hand the child over to him. And boom, this triggers the exact mechanical fulfillment of the prophecy. The absolute second the queen places the infant on Krishna's lap, the magic kicks in. Instantly, those extra arms detach and drop to the floor. The strange third eye vanishes into thin air. The child looks totally visually normal. But as you can guess, the implication of that normalcy is absolute horror for the mother, because the prophecy has just been proven true. Krishna is the destined slayer. Immediate sheer panic sets in. The mother, totally alarmed and overflowing with anxiety, begs Krishna for a boon. She essentially says, Krishna, I am terrified. Please grant me a boon. You're the dispeller of everyone's fear. Krishna, being the respectful nephew, tells his aunt not to worry and promises to do whatever she asks. And that is when she locks in her desperate demand. She tells Krishna that, for her sake, he must pardon the offenses of Sisupala. She's desperately trying to build a safety net to protect her son from his own prophesied executioner. And this creates this incredible, mind-bending cosmic paradox. On one side, we have Krishna as the destined slayer, confirmed by the universe itself. But on the other side, we have Krishna as the divine protector. He yields to his aunt's plea and gives his word. He says, "O aunt, even when he will deserve to be slain, I will pardon 100 offenses of his." He doesn't just promise to let a mistake or two slide, no. He grants a massive 100-strike safety net. Even when Sisupala commits an act completely worthy of death, he gets a free pass, 100 times. Which leads us to our final phase, the danger of a boon. So, this brings us right back to our starting point, and it perfectly explains the mystery of why King Sisupala operates with such wicked impunity as an adult. The story Bhishma is telling isn't just some magical fairy tale. It's a deep dive into the very roots of Sisupala's hubris. Think about it. Knowing you have a divine guarantee that your first 100 terrible offenses will be completely ignored, that is the ultimate recipe for moral hazard. Sisupala grows up knowing that the most powerful being around literally cannot touch him until he crosses this incredibly high numerical threshold. So he isn't acting out of bravery when he picks fights with mighty warriors. He's acting out of the twisted arrogance of a guy who thinks he's functionally invincible. His wicked heart is entirely sustained by a loophole. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this final thought about human psychology. When given a guaranteed, mathematically precise free pass for bad behavior, does humanity use that grace to rise above their baser instincts, or do they treat it like a quota and just race to the absolute limit? Sisupala's story deeply suggests the latter. It really leaves us wondering, are consequences the only thing actually keeping arrogance in check? Thank you so much for joining me as we unpacked the fascinating psychology and mythic origins of Sisupala's 100 pardons. Keep questioning the text, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.